The event that took place in the context of the Nigerian Civil War caused lots of ethnic differences. It influenced pogroms, bloodshed, and genocide. In the words of UCHE nwokedi, Nigeria is as a result of a shotgun marriage of over 300 diverse cultures. You see, hatred and misconceptions started when history as a subject was no longer taught in schools. Someone said removing history from our curriculum is an evil agenda. Nevertheless, it does not still erase memories. From 1967 to 1968, Aba was under heavy bombardment. The Britain and the Russians were both supporting the Nigerian army, and they were supplying its armies with arms and ammunition. I heard Gowon had boasted that the Biafra issue was a matter to be handled by the police and would be over in 3 weeks. The 3 weeks grew into months until it became a full-blown war that lasted 3 years. I also heard that the Biafra started the war with only 89 rifles. During the Nigerian Biafran War, many Igbo fled other parts of the country for the east because they were being killed. They were confronted with the challenges of beginning life afresh from the scratch with almost nothing. And those living on the other side needs to migrate. Many abandoned their homes, properties, and businesses for safety. Life became ephemeral and heavily laced with anxiety. Friends and neighbors packed up and moved away from the east. Ojukwu has said that people from the other parts of the country were at the liberty to leave the east for their own safety. When Gowon declared war on Biafra, many people from the eastern region who had settled in Lagos and other parts of the western region ran back to their homeland. Their experiences were not as tragic or traumatic as those who ran back from the north. Starvation was a legitimate weapon of war. The Nigerian government was deliberately blocking food and other essential supplies from entering Biafra so that the people would surrender or starve to death. With scarcity of food and drugs comes starvation. With starvation comes death. 2 young soldiers led us into war. From my research, the war could have been avoided. I wouldn't want us to go deep, but let us talk history. Like I told you, many people fled the north and the west. One of them was a young Igbo architect who had a Yoruba banker as a neighbor in Apapa, Lagos. He also abandoned his home and his family and fled for the east. Let me take you back to the abandoned property law that was in operation then in Nigeria. It states that any person who had fled from his home anywhere in Nigeria to any other part of the country or elsewhere as a consequence of the Civil War, meaning anyone who fled to the east as a result of the war, was deemed to have abandoned his property. Law students or legal personnel should remember the celebrated case of Ojukwu versus the military governor of Lagos State. However, the young banker, while the war lasted, rented out his neighbor's house and kept every cover for him while he was in the east, despite knowing the abandoned law property was in place. After the war, the Igbo Architect returned to Lagos, and the Yoruba Banker handed over the entire proceeds of the rent and also the house to the Igbo Architect. Some few years later, the Igbo Architect became the Vice President of Nigeria, and the Yoruba Banker wanted to establish a commercial bank. However, he could not get his license to begin his banking operations. Many people were against him because it was unheard out of that time. At this time, the banker remembered his neighbor who was now the vice president, and he tried to track him. He later helped him with his application of his banking license. By 3 p.m. the next day, the finance minister called the banker on his phone that his license was ready. The young banker was Otumba Michael Olashubo Balogun, while the architect in this narrative was one of the African elder statesmen and the former vice president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Dr. Alex Ekweme. Because of the thing alleged that Awolowo did, most Igbo now hate all Yorubas. Even some parent programs that key to hate Yorubas because of what they feel one Yoruba man did 60 years ago. It is time we embrace ourselves. Igbo believe that Pa Awolowo is their enemy because he taught Gowon how to stop the Igbos and make them to surrender during the Biafra War. During the course of that war, humanity still prevails. Some Yoruba and other tribes still show love and empathy towards the Igbos. The Yoruba man saved the Igbo property as well as his proceeds for him. The Igbo man in return helped him with his bank license. The Yoruba Banker was the founder of FCMB, while the Igbo Architect was the former vice president of Nigeria.